All right, so that brings us to our meeting today. We of course have Shayla LaBeouf, who got a chemical engineering co-op from Armian, Missouri. Then we have Darcy Lyons with a Lyondell production engineering co-op, and we have Nicholas Puzon with an Ingevity process engineering co-op. All right, that is not thank you for joining us. I have questions for y'all. So if y'all want to go ahead and unmute your mic, I'm just going to basically ask y'all a series of questions that have been proposed. If y'all could each like kind of take turns going. But at the end, we'll have a Q&A just in case if any people have any further questions for you. So the first question we have is going to be, what was the reason behind you beginning your search for a co-op? Nick, Darcy, whoever, or Shayla.
I know for me, you know, in Chemie 101 and all of our other classes, we're told, you know, you're going to need a co-op if, you know, you want to, for future job opportunities and such. But, you know, from, I think, day one, starting chemical engineering and being in the chemical engineering department, we were told that getting a co-op was the best way to further our career.
Yeah, that was kind of the same for me as well. Like I thought that an internship would be interesting. I wanted to learn more about like industry before I actually went out into industry. And so when I joined SWE, like that was something that I really wanted to do, was get a co-op. And so I did the SWE conference.
Yeah, and pretty much the same thing for me. I just knew that everybody says over and over again, you need to get a co-op, you need to get a co-op. And looking into it, it sounded interesting because I knew we didn't get to go to any plants during our, well, not too many plant tours during our curriculum. So getting real world experience was going to be really valuable.
Okay, and what resources did y'all use to apply to your co-ops?
So I got mine at the SWE conference, actually, in WE18. I went to the conference and was a little overwhelmed by the massive amount of people there and the massive amount of companies that were present. But when I went, you were able to narrow down your search in like the little app to like chemical engineering. And I literally just started going down the list alphabetically, and Ameren was one of them. So that's how I got mine.
Yeah, I went to the UL career fair, but I didn't have any luck there. And I then went to the SWE conference in 2018, and I did the same thing Shayla did, made a list of all the chemical engineering companies, went to every single one of them until I just couldn't talk anymore. And I ended up meeting up with LyondellBasell, and I really hit it off with the woman. So the rest was that.
I entirely went to just the UL career fair. I also went to the SWE 18, but I didn't get any interviews there. But the UL career fair, I talked to Ingevity, and then several months went by and ended up getting the co-op.
Okay. So how would each of you kind of describe your experience with like the interview process, or like just your, like after y'all got that interview, what was it kind of like going through that process? If that makes any sense. I can reword it.
I initially got an interview pretty quickly after applying online and talking to the booth. I got an interview at UL in career services. So I just went through that interview, and then after that, there was quite a lengthy amount of time where I didn't hear anything. And so I started kind of pestering the HR people. And eventually, as more and more of the co-ops that were available got crossed off, the final one, I was able to just pester them enough to where they gave it to me.
For me, I got the interview at the SWE conference the same day that I had talked to the booth. It was like right before the career fair had closed, and I got an interview. And then I think a week later, I got a phone call from them, but I accidentally missed the initial phone call because I was in class. And so I called them back, but I never heard a response. Like I just kept calling the phone number, but then 2 days later, they gave me another call, and they offered me the job in that phone call. And then after that, it was just a long wait until I started. So I got the offer in spring, and I wasn't going to start until, no, I got the offer in fall, and then I wasn't going to start until the next fall. So that was how mine was.
Yeah, so mine, I kind of interviewed at the booth at SWE. I didn't realize I was interviewing at the booth, but I basically interviewed at the booth. She filled out this long paper or whatever. And then it was like weeks went by, like almost a month before I heard anything back from them. And I didn't think I was going to hear anything back at all, but it was almost a month and I had gotten like a call from their HR people wanting to do like an interview. But the interview was supposed to be in person, but Ameren is in Missouri. So I ended up doing, I actually like got to reserve the interview room in career services. And so I did my interview like on campus, like through Skype, just kind of like in a more like professional setting, I guess. And they asked some pretty hard questions. I think the most difficult question I was ever asked in an interview, because I interviewed for a lot of companies at over the process of this all. But like they asked me, um, tell me about a time when someone questioned your integrity in the middle of an interview. That was really difficult, but I ended up figuring it out, I guess, in the long run. And like a couple days later, they offered me the job, but they only gave me like 3 days to accept it, to like decide to move to Missouri for a while. And it was going to be, I found it in like November of that year, and it was going to be for in May of the following year. So yeah.
So once y'all started your co-ops, what was your kind of day-to-day experience like?
For me, I would get to work around 8 and then would have a morning meeting, which I was involved with every single morning. But then I started to get projects, and I think I think the most at one time I had a total of like 8. Most of the time, my day to day was just going to ask operators or other engineers various questions in order to get my projects further along. But it was a lot of just being out in the plant, problem solving alongside the engineers, something that might not be important at that exact time, but what was definitely important for the future of the company.
Yeah, so my day started at 6:30. That was when we started opening at the plant because there were 3 different shifts, and that was like one of the beginnings of a shift change for all the operators. And so that's when our day would start bright and early. We'd have a safety meeting where we would meet. So I worked with one other chemical engineer in the plant, and we would meet with all of our lab guys in the morning and have like just like a general, hey, this is what's happening today. And then from then it kind of just changed day to day, like depending on like the projects I was doing, kind of like Darcy said, and trying to get those done. And a lot of just like learning how the equipment worked and how to maintain it and how to like keep track of it. There were a lot of times like later in my co-op where like my engineer wouldn't be on the plant site, and so like I was the only chemical engineer on the site, and so like I became a contact person for a lot of things. So that would happen fairly regularly too, so that kept me pretty busy.
Yeah, my day started at 8, not quite as early, but basically for the first month or so, I was able to just learn the process. My boss just said learn everything about it, and then shadow a couple people. So I shadowed a few people and learned kind of the different departments in the plant and how they work together. And then after that, I was given one small area of like a finishing line of our resin, and I basically just kind of worked to gather data and try to improve that process day to day. Go out and collect samples every day and try to use that data to improve the quality of the finished product. And then yeah, just meetings throughout the day. I was able to do not PHAs, but just various safety meetings and safety incident reviews and things like that, to where I can learn basically as much as possible about what's going on in a plant throughout the day. And yeah, various projects and everything like that changed a lot day to day.
Do y'all have any like specific things that you think you learned at the co-op that you don't think you would ever learn in a classroom, like at UL or anywhere else?
So I think for me, the biggest thing that I learned in my co-op was not necessarily a lot of like super technical things. Like, yeah, we learned a lot about the equipment and stuff, and that's helpful in like classes later on, like for unit ops and stuff. But like I think the thing that I learned the most in my co-op was like how much of like a a management position engineering is rather than just like a technical position. It's a lot of like working with other people and like kind of just like not necessarily telling people what to do, but like also just like making sure we're all doing the right things. I don't know. I didn't realize engineering up until that point. I hadn't realized how much of like a management based role an engineer was rather than like a super technical hands-on role.
I would definitely agree with Shayla for that. But I think one of the big things I learned, especially like in a plant environment, was how involved engineers are with operators. So in our basic classes, we learn our basic engineering processes, we learn process controls, even the equipment that might be in a plant. We learn that in school, but I don't think school prepares you for being able to work alongside operators as well, because they are hands-on constantly with the plant. You have to work alongside with them to problem solve the things that might be going on or the day-to-day issues. They're the first people on front line that know what's going on. So I don't think that's something that you'd ever learn in school.
Yeah, a lot of the same stuff for me. I think a lot of the equipment, basically just seeing what equipment looks and feels like and how it acts and what the real data looks like coming from it. Looks like it's not straight lines and everything like that. And learning how to use that. And then, yeah, operators being the most important roles in the plant pretty much. And just knowing how to talk to them and understand that how valuable their information is and how, because they're the ones basically looking at everything every second of the day. So really valuing theirs over maybe some other engineers who don't quite as much. And then the last one, probably, yeah, how managing projects. It's not so much just like math and everything. It's like you have a very rough idea of a project or what you need to do, and you're just kind of throwing everybody at it, making sure everything's at the right spot when it needs to be, instead of all the hard work that has to go into it. So.
Well, on the flip side of that, was there anything from the UL classrooms that y'all found particularly helpful in your day-to-day work life?
For me, transport phenomena was probably one of the more helpful classes whenever it came to a lot of the projects that I worked on. So one of my main projects was attaching a steam line, and I had to do a lot of flow through pipe calculations and just a bunch of stuff like that. And also mass transfer, which I had taken the semester before. That was also helpful in understanding just the way everything was operating the plant. But now that I've been in my last semester of senior year, I would definitely say reactions probably would have been helpful, because one of my main projects dealt with our reactor.
I didn't have to do a whole lot of rigorous calculations up there, but definitely just kind of knowing general distillation fundamentals. Those are definitely, I knew a little bit, but definitely now knowing them a lot more rigorously and understanding volatility and things like that, and that light stuff goes up, heavy stuff comes down. I kind of had to learn it on the fly there, where having the classes like stage ops and plant design would have been super helpful to understand all of these different things.
So I actually did a lot of projects that involved corrosion coupon testing and stuff. So corrosions was really helpful for me. And we used a lot of polymers in our water treatment system. So like that was helpful to kind of understand what the heck was going on in there, to like clean up our water and stuff. And then in one of my like bigger projects that I did, I actually used ChemiCalc. I had to make like a mass balance around like a system to figure out what was coming in, where it was going out, so we could figure out how to fix the system. So like I thought that was kind of interesting, because that was reaching far back in my brain. But yeah, that's what I used.
Would y'all say there are like pros or any cons to getting an internship or co-op while you're in school?
I would say, oh, sorry, Shayla, you can go first.
Okay. I think the only con that I would have to say is that like it does take you longer to graduate. Because you can't graduate in 4 years if you do a co-op. Like you have to take a semester off, or multiple semesters off, and that'll delay you a whole year, especially with all the fall spring classes. So like this semester, I'm only taking like 3 classes because I've taken everything else up to this point except the ones I was able to take. But I think the experience that you get from it and the information you learn from a co-op are like invaluable. Like it's so worth it.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. You're never going to get as hands-on experience as you would in a co-op. And I think maybe some of the cons, yeah, you might graduate late, but I took a co-op and I'm graduating late, but the company that I did a co-op with offered me a job for when I graduate. So that's definitely a big benefit, especially now with the job market and COVID and everything. So I would definitely say that's probably the biggest biggest pro of being it, but definitely worth, I think, graduating late for that.
Yeah, and I think the only con for me, other than the pros for them, is basically we're probably going to get job offers, and then basically just invaluable experience, being able to relate to your classes, and then coming into industry with a semester or a year of experience is just leagues ahead, and then of somebody who might not. And then the only con I had was probably that I was 4 hours away from everywhere else, or from my friends and everything. So I can't imagine even further, but that's a minor nitpick.
So would you say, like, in the end, do y'all think y'all are better prepared to enter the job market, or more, I guess, more just like your work experience puts you ahead of your peers who didn't have that work experience?
I think for sure, especially because, I mean, if you do a co-op with a company, there's a high chance that they'll offer you a job if you go to work, do a good job, do what you're told and come up with other projects, you'll most likely get a job with that company once you graduate. And then even if you don't get a job with that company, the work that you've done, or the fact that you already have experience under your belt and you're not going to go in there like a fresh engineer, definitely helps with being able to talk in interviews for future job opportunities and such.
Yeah, I think I had a rotational co-op, so I was supposed to do a semester, skip the summer, do a semester, and then go back the summer. I decided to just put that summer in the middle and do a full year. So I basically had an entire year's worth of experience with no breaks that I'm going into industry with. Whereas if some other individual doesn't have that, then that definitely puts me ahead. And I feel more comfortable going into a plant environment now than, say, just coming straight out of classes than I would have.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that doing the co-op, it gives you the experience, especially like in interviews. It's not one of those things that you get to put on your resume that like you're not going to have anything to talk about. Like it's not some random honor society that might look good on your resume. Like in an interview, like you can actually talk about things that like you've done, and like that resonates with like the companies that you're interviewing with. Like I got a job for when I graduate with P&G in Alexandria, and like that has nothing to do with like utilities, because Ameren's a utility company. Like I worked at a coal plant, has completely nothing to do with it. But like the fact that like I worked there and like I had experience like with different things, and I think that just like really helps in like those kind of situations to like get a job when you're done.
Well, do y'all have any helpful advice or anything you wish you would have known whenever you started out looking for a co-op?
Main thing I can say is, before Shayla talked about having things to talk about in interviews, before you go to get internship interviews, I know we're in COVID pandemic right now, so we're kind of shut down, but having at least one activity of something other than maybe just like a membership in a club where you just go to the meetings, to really try to get involved in at least one thing, where it's either a technical thing like Chemicar, or really volunteering through SWE and then going to the conference and everything like that. Really try to have like one thing that you did. And then if you can do like I did, if you get in a rotational co-op and you can pull it to a full year where you have no breaks, that would be probably one of the best things I did, to where I didn't have to take a break from any projects. I was able to just work a full year.
Yeah, I think what Nick said about like the resume stuff, like it's really good to be involved in something and kind of just like you don't have it doesn't have to be something technical. Like if you're in a like leadership position in a company, like in a program like SWE or like AICHE or whatever, like companies really like that and they like you to like tell them what you did. So like if you were the treasurer and you manage the money, like did you meet your goals? Like did you like as that part of like the club or whatever, like they like to know things like that. And definitely don't be afraid to like apply places that are like a little bit far. Like it is like Nick said, like he was 4 hours away from his people. I was in St. Louis, I was about 10 hours away from here. So like but don't be like afraid to do that. Like we're young and we can do things and we can go to places and like experience new places, even if that's not where we want to end up. Like there's no reason you have to end up there. So
And then I think, uh, of course, beef up your resume, definitely make sure that it's, a good format. Like I think whenever I first started applying places, I had a very crappy resume format, but through career services, through all the help through engineering classes, I was able to fix that up. But when it comes to the actual interview, definitely do practice interviews with, maybe close friends or families, because learning how to interview definitely helped, I think, because I only had one interview total in my entire experience trying to apply for co-ops, and that happened to get me the job. So I definitely think that focusing on interviewing techniques and just, maybe talking with another person through and then learning the questions you should ask interviewers is probably one of the most important things when it comes to an interview. So it's like, it's not just you answering questions, like you have to ask them questions, like you have to be engaged in a conversation essentially. So I think that is pretty helpful.
Going off of that, what questions did you ask that you feel like got a reaction out of your interviewers that you think helped you with the end-all job opportunity?
I mean, I know just basic ones were just like what was their favorite part about the company, or like why they chose the company that they're working at currently. Maybe any challenges or difficulties they have at the company or anything like that. But I remember at SWE, there's a lot of panels and such. And I remember the day before the career fair, there was panels on how to interview. And then they had a printed out thing of questions to ask interviewees. And I remember reading through that and then like asking 3 or 4 of those questions. And the feedback was very like positive, and it was a conversation.
yeah, career services has a list like that too that you guys can get, because I used a list like that for my like interviews. And one of the questions that I tended to ask was more along the lines of like what kind of qualities you're looking for in an employee for this position. And then like they could tell you about it, and then like you could go off and be like, oh, like here's how I demonstrate those qualities in myself, to kind of like sell yourself a little bit more, because it's really difficult to sell yourself. Like it's kind of awkward at first, trying to figure out like to how to promote yourself. But like I thought that was a really unique way to like have that conversation.
Yeah, the biggest one I can think about is that people like to talk about. Oops, sorry. That people do like to talk about themselves, and so asking them questions, a lot of like, what do you do day to day? What is it like to be in a plant? Especially because I had no experience, so I was actually curious, and then they like to talk about their experiences. So asking them a lot of questions about what it's like at their job, and then that really helps you to see if you like what it sounds like to be at that company as well.
Okay. Well, do y'all have any last comments or pieces of advice y'all want to give out before we go into our Q&A session?
Get in every vessel you can. It's like the most fun part.
And if you're in a new city, definitely do some sightseeing. That was such a fun thing to do, especially like in a big city. So.
All right. Well, does anybody from the audience have any more questions maybe our panel can answer for you? Don't be afraid. You can either turn on your microphone or you can ask in the chat and I will ask the question for you if you want.
I guess I can come in first. So thank you, three of you. I mean, three of you gave us very important information about finding jobs. Even for me, if I'm going to market, I think I learned a bunch of things. So very helpful, and I think it's very hardly sharing. And so what, I have a question. I mean, on behalf of the student. So how about, I mean, the GPA? How much they look at your GPA with your like when you standing in front of them, how much they evaluate your GPA? So I think that's one question some people might be interested.
In my experience, and from what I've heard, it's good to have a really good GPA above 3.5 or whatever. But from what I've heard and from what my interviewers asked and said, it was not much looked at, not very looked at. It's not the biggest thing on their list. It's more of kind of what you've done and your experiences with what your values are and everything like that. So,
Well, looking at someone's resume, of course, GPA is going to be something that they look at, but I think, like, let's say you have a lower GPA. Well, if you also have a lot of activities or a lot of things that you've worked on, or let's say you're in a sorority or a fraternity, and maybe your GPA is just a little bit lower, or if you're just in a lot of extracurriculars or sports or anything like that, they're going to look at that and, you know, I think being involved is just as, if not more important, like the things you do, the things you're involved in is really important. If maybe GPA is a thing you're worried about, it's just, you know, how involved are you, even if you have a lower GPA. So like you might be in ChemiCar with exactly like maybe a 2.8, 2.9, almost 3.0. Those activities and such are going to get the interviewer's attention more than I think your GPA would.
Thank you.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I do think experience has a bit more weight. I think a good GPA doesn't hurt you, but they definitely want to know more about your experience than you can take tests. So.
Thank you very much. Oh, one more thing, just to share, like just to let you know that, like, I mean, you guys, I think Darcy said that you guys are young, so distance is not a problem. If now Michigan offer you a job, a good job, so you just go there. Tesla offer you a job, just go there. For me, like you are 4 hours, I'm like 10,000 miles from my family. So I think when you are young, you can experience the world and get enough experience. And after that, you get your experience, your money, you have a lot of freedom to be wherever you want. So that's one thing I can share. Yeah, thank you.
I agree about distance. The one thing I will say is when I went to the SWE conference, I did not have a 3.0 GPA. And this is just from personal experience. I would go up to a person and they would immediately like shut me down sometimes, like immediately wouldn't even start a conversation with me. So GPA may not be super important. Like I work throughout college. I'm now the SWE president. I ended up getting an internship. So it's not end all if you have a bad GPA, like there are opportunities out there and you can definitely improve. Like I've improved my GPA. It was all because I didn't understand the concept of dropping classes when I first entered college. But the main point is you have to get involved. You have to put yourself out there. Definitely do not be afraid of getting rejected. I got rejected a whole bunch because of my GPA. I cried in a corner at the SWE conference one time. But the problem, like the end all, is like I ended up getting my dream internship. I ended up working at a winery and I went all the way to California. It was beautiful. So if you're afraid, the point is don't be afraid, put yourself out there. GPA definitely isn't everything, but it is super important. So try in all your classes, pay attention in all your classes, because some of the things you may not think are important at that time are definitely going to be important later. And that's my 2 cents on that whole thing. But if anybody has any, oh, Miss Melanie said, you can put your major GPA or the last 60 hours GPA on your resume if they're higher than your cumulative GPA, which is also very, very true. But yeah, so if y'all have any questions or concerns, if you don't feel comfortable asking them right now, you can always email me at bbb8506@louisiana.edu. And I'll personally answer your questions or get you in contact with our panel. Like I'll email them your questions, or you can always email us at I forgot the email already. It's our SWE email. You can email us at our SWE email, which is on our website. And I have made a point of checking it every day. So if you have any questions, email that email and we will get you answers. But if I'm going to leave the floor open for another 5 minutes, if y'all want to answer, like ask some questions, and we'll be more than happy to answer them for you.
And Brianna, I just wanted to add a little bit about the GPA. So for my internship, the biggest issue for me was getting the interview. But once I had the interview, they allowed me to explain why my GPA wasn't as high as some of their other applicants. They asked if I thought that my GPA was representative of my work ethic. So I was able to explain that I, left college at a young age and I'm returning, but I still carry that GPA from when I failed classes when I was younger. My major GPA was pretty high. My GPA since returning to college was way higher than my cumulative. So even though I had less than a 3.0, they still considered me for the job, and I ended up working there for almost 2 years.
That's awesome. Yeah, I got a couple interviews, like despite my GPA at the time. And I mean, I got myself in the door and it was great. They just asked, they ask the questions about like why. So you have to be able to provide that explanation.
One thing that come to my mind while you guys are sharing. So I think one more thing, right now, you are in the College of Engineering, during the quarantine, you don't see that many people, but during regular semester, you met a lot of seniors or students younger than you. Almost every minute when you're working in the hallway. So I think sometimes it's good to stop by, talk with them, get to know more people, especially in the circumstance you have lower GPA. For example, now Darcy got a job. So now, you happen to somewhere in the student lounge talked with Darcy. Then okay, when at the time you're looking for a job, you send an email to Darcy. Hey, Darcy, I'm looking for a job. Do you have any opening in your company? You can refer me, something like that. So I think social networking is super important. So, and because we are all from the same university and same regional, like University of Louisiana, you all graduate from same area, you had a chance to talk with them before. So that will be invaluable wealth for you, invisible, but it's there. So for example, for me, I feel like that because we were I'm trying to inviting a bunch of students to all of you to give this kind of panel to students. But since I joined 3 years ago, so I happen not knowing that much seniors. So, but the first one I found out is Nick. So Nick was in my 301. So then I said, hey, Nico, I know I know you did co-op. So can you give us a info session? Then then Nicholas will come and, hey, Shayla and Darcy all did the same thing. So see, through Nick, I got 2 more person. So I think the networking thing is super important. So I think even the virtual time, you're still trying to be friendly, just trying to talk with each other, be friends and help each other. Later, they might you might help them, and they might come back when they help you. So I think networking during college time is super important, because in company sometimes you are in competition for a role with some other people, and you don't have a chance to know that many people. Because I work in a company, you only see 3 or 4 people a day. I mean, for years or months, sometimes, I mean, because that's your regular team. So your social networking, its range is shrunk a lot. So college is the best time to build up your invaluable network. So that's one thing I just want to add for you guys.
Yeah, and where I was at in Arkansas, it was kind of not quite the middle of nowhere, but it's a little bit in the middle of nowhere. It's definitely a mill town. The town's there because of the paper mill that was there. And so sometimes it was hard for them to recruit. Well, I was basically like, my boss was like, hey, can you know anybody at UL that would want to co-op? And I basically could have gotten anybody in the door. That at that second, I asked the KimiCart team, because and I still had the group chat with them, so I asked them first and everything like that. So it's even the people, I was really willing to give it to the opportunity to anybody that was in the chat, basically. So just kind of cool to be if you're in a club like that.
I definitely agree that networking is an extremely important thing to do, especially in college. I know one way that I networked, at least with all of the previous graduating class before I had gotten my co-op, was on LinkedIn. Definitely make sure you get a LinkedIn and you link up with all your classmates and such. So LinkedIn is definitely very, very important interviewing and connecting resource, I would say. And then another important thing is not just networking with the students, but being able to talk with your professors and such, because when you get an interview, you have to start thinking about who are you going to use as references. Like if you don't have any prior work experience, which I didn't, like, I had to think of maybe a couple of professors that I could easily call on and be like, hey, could I use you as a reference, which is really important, especially with backing up, your character. But I would definitely say it's not only important to talk to your classmates and other, group, other Chemi members, but definitely the professors as well for those, references and such.
One more thing I want to share, just continue Darcy's comment. Yes, I think Nick come to me for reference, so I didn't even hesitate to offer one, because he was one of the smartest students in my class, and always sometimes if he has question, he just email me the question. So from my 6th or 7th semester of teaching in UL, I usually got 30 or 40, even 60% people in my class. So some students, so we are all human beings, right? I treat everyone, equally, definitely, but I have to admit that some person, I just don't remember the name because they didn't come to me. I don't have time to reach to everyone, and they don't ask questions. They just show up. Sometimes even don't show up. So I think one thing you can not impress, but at least let your professor has some impression on you is like ask some information and ask some questions, or even email the question. You can email the question or come to the office or request a room meeting. So also during the quarantine time in my class, I think I already shared yesterday in Chemi 101. So during the quarantine time, how do you make your professor memorize your face or get familiar with your face? Because I'm talking to a screen every day, and if you just don't show your face, I'm just talking to a black box, But if you turn on your camera, sometimes if I was like I actually have the habit, if you guys are like, or sign a program you guys are working on it, then I would just scroll to the screen to see my student's face, so that way I memorize them. But if you forever in my class just turn off your video then I couldn't memorize your face. I don't know your character, your personality. I couldn't offer the recommendation letter. For me, I am a person, actually, I'm really willing to write a good reference letter to you. But if I don't even know your face, how do if you turn off it, I don't know if you were she or him. So I think that's a good thing. So always ask question or email, not often, you don't have to email us every day, but if you email sometimes if you really have question or you need help, something like that, we definitely memorize your face and have very deep impression on you. For example, Nick. And so I think actually Brianna was in my class, so I usually memorize those who actually is very active in everything. Yeah, that's just some from my point of view.
Well, thank you everyone, Ms. Ling Fei, Nick Pouzon, Darth Lion, Shayla LaBouffe, and even just thank you all for coming. If y'all have any questions, please, again, do not hesitate to reach out. And I will try to answer them for you, or any of our officers will try to answer them for you. So thank you. If there isn't any more last minute remarks, I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting. So have a great night, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Brianna, I just have one quick question. So
Yeah.
later, are we going to post a link on the screen?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I'm going to figure it out. I'm not super tech savvy, but I'm going to figure it out. All right, well, have a great day, everyone. And then if y'all need anything, just let us know. Goodbye.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thanks.